Good morning, everybody. I want to thank all of you for coming to the Comptroller's office for our analysis of New York City's modified FY15 executive budget. Joining me here today are some of our deputy controllers. Elena Gilligo is the first deputy controller. Tim Mulligan is deputy controller for budget. Michelle Mark Levine is deputy controller for accountancy. Carol Kostick is deputy controller for public finance. Camille Joseph is deputy controller for public affairs. Lisa Flores is deputy controller for accountancy. And I think that covers everybody. We have our chief counsel, Kay Diaz, as well. Many of you were here in February when I discussed the preliminary budget as part of my charter-mandated responsibilities as controller. Today, I will be providing an analysis of the city's modified FY15 executive budget. We're going to discuss the budget in three parts. The first is the state of our national and city economies. We're going to detail the expense budget, including the labor agreements, and my office's projections of revenue and expenses moving forward. Let's go to the first slide. Okay, first I want to talk about the city's economy and job creation. I showed you this slide in February, and the story remains the same. New York's strong job recovery continues to be the best economic news for the city. Since the Great Recession, New York City's job creation has been much stronger than the nation's. Through April, the city gained 5.5% more jobs compared to the previous peak employment in August 2008. In contrast, the U.S. still had not recovered all the jobs lost to the recession. New York City's job growth has outpaced the nation's in important sectors, such as information and business and professional services. However, the city's financial sector is still not what it was, and unfortunately, we are shedding a greater percentage of those jobs than here nationwide. Now, I think that's a concern because these are highly compensated jobs that help to drive other businesses and our tax base. Next slide. New York City's job numbers are the best news we have, but it is not all blue skies and sunshine. As you can see from this chart, it's really more of a partly sunny, partly cloudy picture. New York City job creation, while still solid, has clearly leveled off, and in fact, even appears to be losing a little steam. This chart shows the 12-month moving average of net job gain. As you can see, job creation momentum peaked in March 2011 and has been declining slowly and steadily ever since. Now, we expect to add 65,000 jobs in 2014. Now, that's a solid increase, but it's less than in each of the previous 3 years. Next slide. Now, I always go with partly sunny, but this chart shows another reason to give those clouds a second look. Although New York City added 71,000 jobs in 2013, they were disproportionately in low-wage industries. Low-wage industries include retail, trade, accommodations, food service, and healthcare and social assistance. Now, just look at this. On the top end, you can see that the high-wage industries, those jobs have literally been cut in half from 2011 to 2013. If you look at our low-wage industries, retail, fast food, look at the move up, almost a 70% increase over the same time period. Now, this is a trend we got to reverse, folks, because it's important to continue talking about jobs like in the high-tech industry that pay a lot more money. These are the jobs that hold the promise to the gateway to the middle class. And again, I think in light of the fact that we see such low-wage job growth in low-wage industries, we also have to recognize that we have to raise the minimum wage so that we can boost the economy. Now, the next slide, this is for all of you economists out there. The next graph shows the average rate of real national economic growth for the past 4 15-year periods. Now, the economists call this secular stagnation, which is basically a way to describe a prolonged period of slow economic growth. As you can see, the past 15 years have been such a period. The question now is whether that reflects a fundamental change in the growth potential of the U.S. economy, or is this the new normal? Now, we don't know, but we're concerned that it could be. Our forecasts recognize that the growth rates achieved in the past may no longer be attainable. Last week, the first quarter GDP was revised. Now, what we thought had been essentially flat growth now reflects a 1% decline in our growth. This revision only underscores our concern about the underlying growth potential of the national economy. These are the factors that we are examining as we budget for our city and find ways to fund necessary initiatives. And I want to just put up a slide to talk about the city initiatives as we begin to talk about our budget. So let's just quickly go through some of the new initiatives. The city budget contains several important programs to help improve the lives of the neediest in our city. Now, many of you know my office did a report on the lack of certified arts teachers, many of them in our poorest neighborhoods. The budget adds $23 million to ensure compliance with state mandates regarding arts education. The budget spends $48 million to modernize the way New York City interacts with its residents by bringing processes such as benefit applications online. The financial plan budgets $80 million over the next 4 years for Working Families Rental Assistance Program. Now, the goal of this program is to help prevent people from going into shelters and also to get them out more quickly. Now, there are very few more daunting challenges than the city's crisis in affordable housing, and the exec budget puts a lot of money into these buckets. Let's go to the next slide. Now, if you'll remember from our discussion in February, I said we wouldn't know the full picture of the city's budget until a labor agreement was struck and we had a pattern set for all of the expired labor contracts. The mayor deserves credit for reaching agreement with the UFT. Yesterday, UFT members ratified that agreement by an overwhelming majority. So today, we will explain how this assumed pattern will be structured for the municipal workforce. Now, let me just say up front, the administration has made the assumption that all of the contracts with the city's 152 municipal unions, including those in the covered agencies like NYCHA and HHC, will follow the economic pattern of the UFT settlement. The easiest way to understand this deal is to divide the city workforce into two groups: those who did and those who did not receive raises in the old round of collective bargaining. Now stay with me. The first group is unsettled. Now, why do we call them unsettled? Because back in 2009, when a majority of the city's workforce received new contracts, those labor unions did not settle in that old round, which meant that they did not receive raises. That's what you see as the dark blue bars in this graph right here. From 2011 through 2014, this group received 8% less annually than their colleagues who had settled in the prior round of negotiations. If you look at the chart, you'll see that percentage is reflected again in the dark blue bars. This new contract addresses paying these unsettled workers in two ways. First, those dark blue bars are scooped up and poured into the lump sum payments beginning in FY16, skipping 17, and then 18, 19, 20, and 21. That's to make up for accumulated money missed out from the past years. These payments don't go into their annual salary, and after the fifth installment, they're done. So you scoop this, you start putting that, you pour in 16 and all the way through, and what kicks in 15 is, with the green, is the money, the raise money, that eventually will close the gap between the settled workers and the unsettled workers, because that 2% kicks in as well. Now, that's important because while they're getting their lump sum payments, the city is phasing in 2% raises into their paycheck. That's how they get caught up. Again, that represents the green bars. Now, I want to talk about the second group of workers. These are the unsettled. Let's go to the settled. Now, the second group is called settled because they received raises in the old bargaining round. Now, enough time has passed that they're now ready for a new contract round, and that's what the negotiations are all about. Now, the second group, as you can see, will get a 10% raise over 7 years beginning in FY12. The annual raises are noted with the dark red, while the light bars are just the cumulative amounts from the prior years. So you can see the raises. 1.1, 1.5, 2.5, and in 2018, we hit 3. So I just want to quickly go back to the unsettled workers because they also got raises too. Shannon, can we go back? And here you have the labor agreement for the unsettled group, old and new, because they also get their raises as well. So they get their lump sum poured in, they get their raises, and that's how they get made whole. Next slide. So what does this all cost? Now, our estimate places the gross cost of the contract pattern at $19.6 billion. Our number includes wages and salaries for unions whose 7-year contract extends beyond FY18. Additionally, we are including pension costs for the final 2 years of the new pattern. Back in February, I said we needed healthcare savings to make these contracts affordable. The agreement includes hefty goals for healthcare savings, which is crucial in keeping this deal affordable. With the healthcare savings and the money that was already put aside in the budget, the actual budget impact of the labor agreement is $7.3 billion through FY21. $7.3 billion through FY21. Now, to make this simple with a complicated chart, the peach boxes, this is peach. I don't think it looks like peach, but it's peach. The peach boxes show the healthcare saving goals and the $1 billion from the Health Stabilization Fund, which adds up to $8.6 billion through FY21. The purple boxes are the money that's already reserved in the budget, what adds up to $4 billion. When you put all that together, 19.6, you do the minus, the net is a $7.3 billion cost. Now, I want to go to the next slide, please. I just want to take a close look at those healthcare saving targets, which are so crucial and critical to the fiscal outlook. You can see the savings target ramp up from $400 million in FY15 to $1.3 billion in 18, a level that is intended to repeat into the future. There's no doubt that the city's healthcare system is inefficient and has not been bid out or improved in decades. But these targets are aggressive. The $1.3 billion in FY18 represents over 17% of the total projected costs for that year. The mayor's administration has structured these targets as contractually enforceable and is confident they'll be met or exceeded. Let me make another important point. The modified executive budget projects a 9.7% increase in healthcare costs before the savings from FY15 through 18. For the last 3 years, healthcare costs have grown more slowly. Now, if that trend continues through the upcoming years, that could get us a third of the way towards the target savings in FY18. So if we continue to have lower growth with the healthcare costs as we've had for the last 3 years, that will help hit this target. Next slide. I want to do something that we elected officials don't do enough of. I want to follow up on the strategies we identified in February for new revenue or savings that were not reflected in the preliminary budget. So these are a couple of items we identified. I want to give you the scorecard because it's important to hold Albany accountable and elected officials accountable. So let's take a look at some of the things we pointed out in February. First, we said in February that we should restore revenue sharing, right? We're the only big city that gets no revenue sharing. The two houses, the Senate and the Assembly, appropriated $200 million in their both house budgets, And guess what happened? Nothing. We got no revenue sharing. Second, we said that we should get the school aid we are owed for CFE. Well, we got $200 million more, but that's hardly a down payment on the $2.7 billion in funding that is owed to our city. We didn't get that either. Third, we said that the Department of Education should get more federal Medicaid funds available for special ed. But the Department of Education is still leaving hundreds of millions of dollars on the table, and you in the press should be aware of that. They should get the paperwork together and the staffing together to claim that money that is literally being left out there. Now, we also said, we urged, for number 4, we urged the city to claim its share of the $8 billion federal Medicaid waiver. Now, the state got the waiver, but the city has not been assured a specific share. The feds and the state need to do the right thing and give us our fair share of the funds. It's been many, many months. We've heard nothing. Fifth, I said in February, we need to produce agency savings from efficiencies that don't reduce services or hurt vulnerable populations. We have not had that PEG program, and that's a potential problem, because one of the ways that we keep to our moderate financial plan is we always identify bureaucratic inefficiencies, which can result in savings of hundreds of millions of dollars. Now, if the city agencies won't do this, as controller, we're going to go through agencies and help them identify their inefficiencies, which is why I want to speak clearly about the Department of Education. This is a bureaucratic inefficiency when you can't submit federal paperwork and you leave hundreds of millions of dollars on the table. Now, let me just give some good news, because just as we critique, we also praise. I said that we should achieve savings through productivity and benefit reforms, including healthcare costs, and the city has targeted $3.4 billion in healthcare savings over 4 years. We say that's critical. It's worthy and it's smart. 7, we have to reform tax expenditures. Now, that's an open question. That has not been done. 8, we have to generate additional savings in debt service through aggressive financing. Now, that's a mayoral controller job, and Carol Kosick, our deputy controller for public finance, is working with DOE, but we have to be more aggressive while interest rates remain low. 9th, I said that the city should recognize prior year payables, and the city actually included $400 million of prior year payables for FY 2014 in the exec. And last but not least, we have to realize savings from ending the budget dance and member item reform. The council has issued great reforms. Congratulations to Melissa Mark Viverito. And without the budget dance, because so much of that budget dance money is already embedded in the budget, we expect this year's adoption process should not drive up expenses hundreds of millions of dollars. I've long advocated for transparent and equitable reforms to the member item system, and I think the speaker and the council is off to a good start. This is something we can realize in potential savings, which would be a first. Let's go to slide 12. We're getting to the conclusion. This is a very important slide, because the top lines here are the out-year budget gaps from the modified 15 executive budget. Now, as you can see, there are no gaps in the current fiscal year or the upcoming fiscal year. So I'm here to tell you today, we believe the budget is balanced, will be balanced, as mandated by the city charter and the Financial Control Board. The gaps, according to the exec, begin in 16. The budget gaps of $2.6 billion in 16, $1.9 billion in 17, and FY 17, and $3.1 billion in FY 18. You can see it right here. These are the exec's numbers. We take somewhat of a more optimistic view of revenue. You see that we pop in 15 almost $881 billion in additional revenue over and above the exec. We go to $1 billion, then 1.6, then we go to 2.3. We have some issues or some differentials in terms of obviously the DOE Medicaid reimbursement, some 10 million in fair share hearing, debt service issues, but when you net out the controller's projections of the out-year budget gaps, we show 1.7, as opposed to 2.5 with the exec. We take it down to 405, and then in 2018 we're at $1 billion. We believe that is manageable as it relates to the budget. So these are the numbers that we put forth for the out-year budgets. Let me just sort of conclude, or in summation, I cannot stress enough that maintaining our fiscal strength depends on sound fiscal management. We have to achieve those healthcare savings, and we have to look at our out-year budget gaps, which we believe are manageable. The city has an opportunity to use the flexibility that the structure of a labor agreement provides in the short term to build back up a cushion in case the economy stalls or falls back into the recession down the line. So this elongated labor agreement actually gives us the opportunity to sock away money because we've identified revenues that are higher than the exec. So this is something that we should monitor and look at. I do think we are up to the task. I think this economy is getting better, but we also have to continue to be cautious, maintain our fiscal integrity. We're certainly going to do that in our office. I wanted to bring you in because I said at the beginning of my term that I thought it was very important that we look at these estimates starting with the beginning of the budget process right before adoption to give you as much transparency, as much explanation about the budget process in terms of labor contracts as well. So we're here now to answer your questions. I want to thank everybody for coming, and I thank you very much.